They say when you buy a home, you're buying peace. A yard to mow, a porch to sit on, maybe a pool to cool off in after a long day. But no one tells you that sometimes you're also buying into control, into politics, into silent battles fought over mailbox colors and lawn height. I just wanted a quiet place to live. No drama, no power plays. Just me, my work, and the sound of water lapping against concrete. But what I got was a neighborhood ruled by fear, and a woman who thought she owned everything, including my backyard. This is the story of how she crossed the wrong homeowner, and how one pool turned into a war zone neither of us saw coming. Caleb Rowe hadn't expected much when he moved to Windsor Meadows. Just quiet. After 20 years working in state environmental compliance, he was tired of hearings, subpoenas, and backdoor politics. He didn't want to deal with water boards, HOA egos, or zoning disputes anymore. Just a clean-cut house, a yard big enough for a pool, and a town where people minded their business. He found it. Or so he thought. It was a crisp Thursday afternoon when Caleb pulled into his driveway, fresh off a short trip to Charlotte. His usual routine: open the car door, breathe in the pine-sweet air, unlock the front gate. But this time, something was off. Loud music, the scent of grilled meat, the unmistakable shriek of cannonballs hitting water. He froze. The noise was coming from his backyard. At first, he thought maybe a neighbor was hosting a party. But no. As he rounded the corner and caught sight of his pool, reality slammed into him like cold chlorine. There were dozens of people, adults lounging under his umbrella, kids splashing in the shallow end, a teen doing TikTok dances on his deck. Someone had dragged a full-sized propane grill right next to his lemon tree. Beer bottles were scattered across the concrete. His lounge chair was overturned, and his Bluetooth speakers were playing generic party pop like it was a county fair. Then he saw her, right at the center. Miranda Shaw, HOA president. High ponytail, crisp white blouse. The kind of woman who smiled with her teeth, but not her eyes. She stood confidently at the edge of his pool with a clipboard in one hand and a red Solo cup in the other. Her sandals clicked as she stepped up onto his deck like it belonged to her. "Welcome, everyone," she announced through a small megaphone. "This is what Windsor Meadows is all about, sharing resources and building community." Caleb didn't say anything at first. His throat was dry, his jaw locked. He walked slowly through the chaos, past a toddler digging crackers into the pool tiles, past a man spilling salsa on the side of his grill, and right up to Miranda. She spotted him, raised her cup like they were old friends. "Caleb! So glad you could join us," she beamed. "We've officially designated your backyard pool as a community amenity. It was a unanimous board vote. You'll find it all in the April newsletter, page 7, bottom left corner." He blinked. "You what?" She gave him a patient smile, as if explaining to a slow child. Windsor Meadows Bylaw 8C allows for the temporary reallocation of residential features for the enrichment of community property value. Your pool is now everyone's pool. "You broke into my property," Caleb said, his voice flat. Miranda waved her hand like it was a minor detail. "Oh, please, we just unclipped the gate. You didn't respond to the HOA's party request email, so we took it as a passive yes." "You mean the spam-looking email from communityrelations@wmhoa.net with no subject line?" "That one," she said brightly. "You really should check your inbox more carefully." A wet tennis ball splashed between them, soaking Caleb's pant leg. He didn't flinch. He just looked at her. Really looked. "I never consented to this," he said quietly. "This is trespassing." Miranda sipped her drink. "You agreed to HOA authority when you bought here. It's in the fine print." As she turned back to the crowd, shouting something about lemonade refills. But Caleb didn't hear her. He was already walking back toward the house, shoes crunching over crushed chips and soggy napkins. His hand hovered over the control panel near the patio door. He tapped a button. Immediately, the pool's filtration system groaned and stopped. Within seconds, the pristine turquoise turned cloudy. Not dangerous. just enough to murk the party vibe. People began murmuring, wrinkling noses. Someone shouted, "Is that slime?" Perfect. He stood there, silent, arms crossed, watching the panic ripple outward. Miranda turned around. "Caleb, what did you just do?" He didn't raise his voice. "Hope you all enjoyed your swim," he said. "Because the pool's officially closed for contamination review." People started climbing out, wiping green-tinged film from their arms. Someone gagged. A woman yelled about skin irritation. The music sputtered and died. Caleb turned back toward Miranda. "You want to quote bylaws?" he said calmly. "You're going to want to reread Section 11D. The one about non-HOA-owned utilities, personal property and liability." Miranda's face tightened. "You're bluffing." "No," he said, already walking inside. "You are." He locked the sliding glass door behind him, shut the curtains, and finally exhaled. His heart was racing, but not from anger, from purpose. Miranda had made a mistake, a big one, and she was about to learn that Caleb Rowe hadn't just worked in environmental law. He had written half the regulations she just violated. Caleb didn't sleep that night. It wasn't anger that kept him awake. It was calculation. He sat at his kitchen table, sipping coffee at midnight, surrounded by HOA bylaws, printouts of county zoning maps, and a USB drive labeled Case Number 1490 HOA Abuse Patterns. Way abuse. Old instincts kicked in like a muscle memory. Identify leverage, cross-reference violations, find the legal cracks no one notices. Across the street, the last of the partygoers trickled out of his yard, dragging coolers and folding chairs with zero remorse. Miranda stayed until almost 1 a.m., calmly directing them like a flight attendant deboarding a plane. She never once looked toward Caleb's window. She didn't have to. She thought she'd won. By morning, Caleb had compiled 3 folders. Folder 1, evidence of unlawful use of private property, including camera screenshots of the broken gate latch, unauthorized utilities usage, and pictures of minors swimming without proper supervision. Folder 2, a highlight reel of HOA missteps over the last 18 months, questionable fines issued to neighbors, patterns of selective enforcement, and several community projects funded with HOA dues that conveniently benefited Miranda's relatives. Folder 3, a fully drafted complaint addressed to the State Department of Environmental Regulation, citing misuse of recreational water systems and potential public health risks due to unsanctioned mass use of non-regulated facilities. He didn't file it yet. He wanted her to feel safe first. That weekend, Caleb installed 2 new surveillance cameras, one disguised in a birdhouse near the fence, the other embedded in a solar light post near the pool. Not out of paranoia, but insurance. Miranda might have been smug, but she wasn't stupid. And people like her rarely backed off. They regrouped. Sure enough, the next HOA newsletter arrived in his mailbox that Sunday. On page 6, buried in a pastel-colored section titled Community Spirit Corner, was a blurb that read, "Thanks to everyone who came out for our inaugural Windsor pool gathering. Special thanks to homeowner Caleb Rowe for offering his property for such a lovely event. We hope to continue this tradition." His name was in print, as if he had agreed. Caleb smiled to himself. That was Miranda's tell. She never attacked directly. She preferred to trap people in polite lies. But he didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, he walked over to the fence between his yard and the HOA's main community park. There, children played on rusted swing sets, and adults sat on benches with missing slats. The HOA hadn't maintained that area in years, but it was still technically in compliance. Caleb took photos. Peeling paint, cracked concrete, a broken storm drain overflowing into the walkway. He sent them, anonymously, to the county inspector's office with a note. This area has not been reviewed for safety since 2018. Might be time. By Monday, Miranda still hadn't said a word to him, but several neighbors had. A man from 2 houses down approached him at the mailbox. "Hey, I heard your pool got hijacked last week. That really happened?" Caleb shrugged. "Depends who you ask." "Look," the man said, glancing around. "I've been fined 3 times this year for dumb stuff. Grass too long, garbage bins out too early, you name it. Meanwhile, the clubhouse roof's leaking and no one's fixed it in 2 months." "You should say something," Caleb offered. The man gave a bitter laugh. "To who? Miranda? She'd have my mailbox audited by tomorrow." Caleb didn't answer, but his mind was already spinning, because that was the key. Miranda ruled with intimidation disguised as formality. People were tired of it, but too afraid to act alone. She had built a paper fortress. All Caleb had to do was find the match. That night, Caleb filed Folder 1 and Folder 3 officially, not anonymously. Under his own name as a state-certified consultant. He attached a cover letter, clean and professional. "As the rightful homeowner, I wish to report unauthorized use and potential exposure to unregulated water systems without consent or precautionary measures, in violation of local and state code." The next morning, he got a phone call. "Mr. Rowe, this is Evelyn Porter with the Environmental Health Department. We've received your filing. Would you be available for a site inspection this Thursday?" "I'll be here," Caleb replied. And as he ended the call, he turned toward the pool. Still green, still quiet, but soon to become the epicenter of a reckoning. By Thursday morning, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. Not the kind of peaceful silence Caleb had once craved, but the charged stillness of a storm just before it hits. Word was spreading, though not from him. People murmured on driveways. Conversations grew short at mailbox stands, and eyes lingered longer when he walked past. Someone knew something. And that something arrived at 9:13 a.m. A white SUV marked North Carolina Department of Environmental Health pulled up in front of Caleb's house. 2 inspectors stepped out, clipboard in hand, badges clipped to their belts. Miranda wasn't home, but her second-in-command, a man named Darren, who once fined a single mom for hanging colored string lights on Halloween, was already walking toward them from 2 houses over, smiling nervously. "Good morning. HO board's fully cooperative with any requests," he said quickly, trying to shake the inspector's hand. They ignored him. Caleb met them calmly at the side gate and gave them a guided tour of the formerly private pool. He showed them the surveillance footage, gave them the HOA newsletter with his name printed without consent, and pulled out the full water chemistry report he'd taken himself. The inspectors took notes, lots of them. Unfiltered mass use, unclear sanitation history, no signage, no child safety measures. One of them murmured, "This is bad." "What's the HOA's defense?" the other asked. Caleb shrugged. "I wasn't invited to that meeting." They both chuckled, but it wasn't warm. By noon, the entire pool was officially classified as under review and closed to public access. A temporary notice went up, red tape and all. That's when Miranda showed up. She pulled in fast, heels clicking as she stormed across the sidewalk like a corporate executive arriving to fire someone. "What is going on here?" she snapped, eyes darting to the red tape. The inspectors introduced themselves with cool professionalism. She changed tone fast. "Oh, yes, of course. Just a little misunderstanding about homeowner generosity." Caleb offered use of his pool for a community event. Everyone had a lovely time. Caleb said nothing. He just let the silence work. One of the inspectors raised an eyebrow. Offered, "We have his formal complaint here, including documents showing a forced reclassification under an invalid HOA bylaw. That doesn't sound voluntary." Miranda faltered, but only for a breath. "Perhaps I misinterpreted. I can assure you the board's intentions were purely—" "We're not here to interpret intentions," the inspector cut in. "We're here to assess health violations, mismanagement of common spaces, and misuse of private utilities." That landed hard. Miranda turned to Caleb, her voice honeyed but tight. Caleb, this is all so unnecessary. A single conversation could have... You mean like the one I wasn't invited to? He replied, eyes steady. Or the one where you printed my name without permission and misrepresented my consent? Miranda's lips pressed into a thin smile. Let's not be dramatic. Behind them, a neighbor peeked out from their window. Then another. A ripple was starting. That afternoon, the HOA message board lit up. Not the public one, the private, residents-only forum Miranda always brushed off as gossip. But it was alive now. Screenshots of the red tape. A blurry photo of Miranda being questioned. Rumors of an audit. Questions about HOA dues. Then came the turning point. A post from a resident named Dina, the same mom who had been fined $75 for her son's plastic tricycle, blocking the sidewalk. She posted a photo of her HOA fine, next to a photo of the HOA clubhouse roof, with a massive leak, dated the same month. Caption: So my toddler's toy was a code violation, but this wasn't. It exploded. Over the next 24 hours, the floodgates opened. A couple claimed Miranda's niece ran the approved landscaping service that charged double market rate. A veteran shared that he'd been cited for painting his fence beige instead of approved sandstone. One woman posted a spreadsheet she'd built tracking HOA dues versus visible repairs over the last 3 years. The narrative flipped. No longer was Caleb the guy who made the pool gross. He was now the guy who finally stood up to them. Miranda wasn't blind to the shift. By Friday, she sent out an official HOA email titled, "Clarifying misinformation regarding community usage." It was a carefully worded damage control effort. Regret any misunderstanding. Hope to maintain neighborly spirit. We are cooperating fully with county guidelines. But it was too late. Caleb read it once, smirked, and hit delete. He didn't need to reply, because he had just received confirmation from the state auditor's office. Due to overlapping complaints regarding misuse of HOA funds and failure to follow HOA governance protocol, an audit of Windsor Meadows HOA finances will commence next week. He leaned back in his chair and looked out at the pool, still roped off in red tape. It wasn't over, but the power had shifted, and Miranda Shaw was no longer untouchable. By Monday morning, Windsor Meadows felt different. The sidewalks were still clean, the lawns perfectly edged. But under the surface, beneath the smiles and neighborly waves, was a quiet revolution brewing. The gossip wasn't gossip anymore. It was documentation, screenshots, timelines. And Miranda Shaw, she was no longer the gatekeeper. Caleb watched it unfold like a slow, perfect domino chain. The HOA's bulletin board, once her sacred scroll of control, now bore 3 flyers pinned side by side. 1. Upcoming health inspection, clubhouse and park grounds. 2. Public HOA records request, signature petition. 3. Audit watch. Where did our money go? The last one wasn't even anonymous. It was signed. Gloria Trin, Unit 7, 12-year resident, former treasurer. That name struck hard. Gloria had resigned 2 years ago, officially due to health reasons. But people now whispered about a disagreement over budget transparency. Now she was back, and with records. She posted a scanned copy of an internal memo Miranda had once circulated to the board. Skip the clubhouse. AC. Repairs this quarter. Prioritize social budget. We need this party to show HOA leadership strength. The date matched a heat wave where the clubhouse was closed for emergency maintenance. But $2,800 had been marked community development. The post went viral, for Windsor standards at least. Dozens of comments followed, all with the same undertone. We've been played. But Caleb, meanwhile, remained quiet. He didn't need to lead the charge anymore. His job was done. He had sparked the match, but now the fire had its own fuel, resentment, proof, and people finally realizing they weren't alone. Still, he wasn't done. He attended the next HOA meeting, the first one since the audit and inspection announcements. It was held in the clubhouse, whose moldy smell now matched its reputation. Usually, these meetings drew 5 or 6 sleepy attendees. That night, over 40 people packed the room, standing shoulder to shoulder. Miranda entered 10 minutes late, face taut, papers clutched to her chest like a shield. She tried to speak quickly, reciting talking points about unifying and not giving in to divisiveness. But no one clapped. No one smiled. Then Gloria stood up, holding a folder thick with printouts. "I move for a full board review," she said clearly. "Under Article 5, Section 2, we have the right to call for temporary suspension of the President, pending investigation." A beat of silence. Then, someone else raised their hand. Then another. Within 5 minutes, a vote was cast. Informal, but overwhelmingly loud. Only 2 people supported Miranda. She tried to defend herself, voice rising. "This is a witch hunt! You're letting one bitter man turn us against each other." Her eyes landed on Caleb, who was sitting calmly near the back. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just raised a single eyebrow. And that was enough. The crowd turned. A woman shouted, "How dare you call us bitter? You fined me for painting my mailbox." A man added, "You made my wife cry over a Halloween wreath." Another neighbor, an older veteran with tears in his eyes, stood up and said, "You sent me a violation notice the day after my wife's funeral, because the trash bins hadn't been brought in." The room fell silent. Then applause. Not raucous, but steady. United. Tired of being quiet. Miranda stormed out 20 minutes later, mid-meeting, her folder flapping in the wind. No one followed her. The remaining board members, including Darren, were left stunned, shifting in their seats like students after a teacher meltdown. Gloria stood again. "I'm requesting an interim oversight committee be formed," she said, "with open books, open minutes, and no unilateral authority. Who's with me?" Hands shot up, including Caleb's. For the first time since he'd moved in, he smiled in public. That night, he walked home under a sky full of stars, his mind strangely still. Not smug, not vindictive, just calm. Miranda's kingdom had cracked, and the people, finally, were pushing through the light. But Caleb knew one thing for sure. People like Miranda never leave quietly. She'd be back. And that's why he left the files on his desk, cameras rolling, and his pool still roped off. Because Act 3 was coming. And it was going to be personal. 3 days. That's how long Miranda stayed silent after the board meeting collapse. 3 long days, where the neighborhood buzzed like a shaken hornet's nest. Sidewalk conversations, Facebook group threads, even whispers in the checkout line at the local market. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Caleb, however, knew better than to let his guard down. Miranda wasn't the type to walk away. She was the type to wait, watching like a spider, waiting for the web to stick again. And sure enough, on the 4th morning, a letter arrived. Cream-colored envelope, thick paper, gold-embossed header that read, "Windsor Meadows Legal Counsel." Inside was a formal cease and desist addressed to Caleb Rowe. The letter accused him of defamation of character, intentional disruption of community cohesion, and, most outrageously, malicious contamination of a public pool. He actually laughed when he read that last part. Public pool? It was his property, his chlorine, his monthly maintenance bill. He read it again, then calmly slid the letter into a folder labeled Desperation. Later that day, 2 residents knocked on his door, Gloria and Marcus, the elderly veteran who'd spoken at the last meeting. They looked uneasy. "She's not done," Gloria said. "Miranda's filing for a temporary injunction to freeze the oversight committee until after the audit." Marcus added, "She's calling an emergency vote, said she's got signatures." Caleb nodded slowly. "She's trying to stall. She's trying to divide," Gloria corrected, as always. And that's when Caleb made a decision. "I think it's time the neighborhood saw the whole story." That night, Caleb uploaded a video to the residents' private online forum. It opened with a calm, steady voice. "Hello, neighbors. Some of you know me. Some only know rumors. But this is the truth." Then, clip by clip, he laid it out. Security footage showing Miranda entering his yard uninvited. A scan of the bylaw Miranda misquoted. A screenshot of her newsletter claiming Caleb had offered his pool. A time-stamped photo of her with the megaphone at the unauthorized pool party. And, finally, the cease and desist letter accusing him of defaming her for defending his property. The video was under 6 minutes, but by the time it ended, it had over 300 comments. She's suing him for his own water? This is sick. No more excuses. She's done. The following morning, Miranda's emergency meeting was scheduled to take place at the HOA clubhouse. But when she arrived, the doors were already open and packed. Standing at the front wasn't Darren or any board member. It was Gloria, and beside her was a state investigator from the North Carolina HOA Oversight Division. They had received Caleb's files. They had confirmed the misuse of funds. And most importantly, they had verified that Miranda had falsified community vote records for 3 separate proposals, including the pool classification. That alone was enough to strip her of all HOA authority pending civil review. She walked into the room expecting a power grab. What she got was a wall of residents, many who once feared her. Now standing with folded arms, clear eyes, and questions she couldn't dodge anymore. Miranda's voice cracked when she tried to speak. She called it a smear campaign. She called it vengeance. But no one listened. Gloria stepped forward. "As of today, by a 78% vote," she said, holding up a signed petition, "we are initiating a community-led referendum to dissolve Windsor Meadows HOA." The room erupted. Some clapped. Some cried. Others just exhaled. Years of tension, resentment, and helplessness bleeding out in silence. And Miranda, she left the room, not with fury, not with grace, just gone. That evening, Caleb sat on his porch with a cold drink, watching the last sliver of sun disappear behind the pines. His pool remained taped off, just for the symbolism. A neighbor walked by, a young father with a toddler, and stopped. "Hey," he said. "Thanks for doing what no one else could." Caleb smiled. "I didn't do it alone." The man shook his head. "Maybe, but you started it." Then he added, "If this whole HOA thing really ends, maybe we should do something real with it. Like, fix the park. Build something the kids can use." Caleb nodded. "Now that's a plan." He looked down at the glass in his hand, and for the first time since the pool party invasion, he felt something unexpected, hope, because this wasn't just a battle against power. It was the beginning of something better. It took 2 weeks for the dust to settle. The HOA was officially dissolved by a 4-to-1 vote margin. Residents turned in their key cards to the clubhouse and shredded years of unnecessary violation letters, including Caleb's, still tacked to his fridge as a private joke. Miranda, she disappeared almost overnight. Her house was listed off-market, sold quietly to a cash buyer from another state. A moving van came one morning. She didn't say goodbye. Didn't even make eye contact with the neighbors she once ruled. The neighborhood didn't celebrate. They exhaled. It wasn't joy that hung in the air. It was relief. For the first time in years, Windsor Meadows felt like a community again. Caleb didn't throw a victory party. He didn't want one. But on a breezy Saturday afternoon, he walked out to his backyard and quietly peeled off the red pool-closed tape. He tested the water, refilled the chemicals, and turned the filtration system back on. The pump hummed like an old friend, waking up from a long nap. By 4 p.m., the water sparkled again. He pulled out a single lounge chair and sat down, letting the sun hit his face. Peace. Not the kind that came from silence, but the kind that came from resolution. No one was using his property. No one was threatening lawsuits. No one was dragging grills across his deck or calling him difficult. Just him, a cold glass of lemonade, and the sound of wind moving through pine trees. Until a voice. "You're not going to hog the pool forever, are you?" Caleb opened his eyes. Standing at the fence was his best friend Milo, with a crooked grin and a box of pizza. "You bought Miranda's house," Caleb said, chuckling. "Sure did," Milo said. "Got it under market, too. Realtor warned me the place had history." Caleb laughed for real this time. "You have no idea." "Well," Milo said, holding up the pizza, "figured I'd move in next to the most famous pool in North Carolina. And hey, at least I won't pretend it's a community center." They both grinned. And just like that, a chapter closed. Not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with friendship, with healing, with a pool finally belonging to the person who built it. That evening, something unexpected happened. Gloria texted him a photo. The neighborhood park, the one once forgotten and rusting, now had 3 men repairing its broken fence. One of them was Marcus. Another was a teenage boy who'd once cannonballed into Caleb's pool. They were laughing. "No more HOA budget," Gloria's message read. But people showed up anyway. Caleb stared at the image for a long time. Then he sent her a short reply. "Maybe now, we're starting to get it right." That night, Caleb stood at the edge of his pool, watching the ripples under the moonlight. No red tape, no angry notes. Just water. Just sky. He smiled to himself and whispered into the quiet. It wasn't about the pool. It never was. It was about boundaries, about respect, about standing your ground, not to destroy others, but to remind them, you can't take what isn't yours.